everybody has their moment of success. Everybody experiences success in different chapters. So for us to get attached and think like, why not me right now? Like, why can't I experience that success? Is just kind of, it's ridiculous to think that way. We should be happy for other people, whatever their endeavors are. Just be happy for your people. Be happy for your enemies. Just maintain that peace inside of you so that you can continue showing up authentically for yourself and for others. Welcome to the Mindful Mundane podcast, where we create meaning in the mundane activities of life so that we can find joy throughout the process. Welcome to episode 2 of the Mindful Mundane podcast. I'm your host, Ashton. I'm a 27-year-old creative entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about daily routine. But instead of talking about how I spend my morning or how I actually have my daily routine set up right now, we're going to focus on 10 new intentions that I'm focusing on for my daily routine, meaning that I don't do these things yet. So we're going to dive into that today. I think that your routine is extremely important. I think what you train your mind to habitually focus on is crucial to success, crucial to long-term success, to achieving your goals, to just becoming the person that you really want to become. To kickstart things, I want to ask you a question. Do you ever go through phases in life, specific chapters in your life, where you just notice this shedding of skin happening? It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on, but you just feel that the shedding of old skin. You just feel like there's a new way of operating now. There's a new way of looking at things. There's a new way of approaching my process because things just need to change. I'm going through something like that, and I've been noticing it a lot, actually, these past couple months, ever since we've moved into this apartment. Just a new environment forces a new routine or a new way of looking at things. One of the very first things that I'm really wanting to focus on, and this is something that is not brand new. It's not broadcasting news or anything. But the first one is limiting phone usage. Why is this so hard for us to stay on top of mind with? Why is it so difficult to maintain your sanity with your phone? Of course, we know the obvious answer. It's because everybody who's on the other side of all of these addictive platforms are literally working 24/7 to manipulate you into just not pursuing your life purpose. They want you to be consumed into this database so that they can sell your information to other people who might be able to capitalize on the things that you struggle with. There's two things that we buy for. It's either to decrease the amount of pain that we're going through, or it's to increase the amount of pleasure that we would want in life. Oftentimes when you follow through with your life purpose, you're not necessarily scrolling through social media. You're not necessarily, dealing with that struggle because you're actually, well, I wouldn't say you're not dealing with it. You are dealing with it, but you're actually dealing with it instead of just finding the next dopamine hit that makes you feel like you're dealing with it. For me, limiting the phone usage, for one, I would love to stop having the habit of taking my phone in the restroom with me. I end up taking twice as long as I need to in the restroom. It's not so much the time wasted, it's the energy that's wasted, right? I think I talked about it on my last podcast. Your energy is so scarce, and when we give energy to social media, it just sucks it out of us. And sometimes I'll just leave the restroom, wash my hands, and I'll just think, damn, I feel like shit. Too much happens when you just mindlessly scroll anywhere, but most of all on the toilet. So that's one of the things. I'm also focusing on no phone for the first 2 hours of the day. I find that 1 hour is good, but 2 hours, on the days that I hit that 2 hour mark, I feel so spot on with my intentions, my purpose. I just feel so focused. Every day, I don't think that being able to access the phone is necessary within the first 2 hours. Like, there's hardly any ever emergencies that you need to cater to at that time of day. And that time of day should really be just focused on self-care. There's this line that I've been thinking of so much lately. I read it in a book and it was just so spot on. Self-care for service. There's something about that I love so much, and it ties into this idea that I believe in, which is we have to fill up our own cup first. And what we give to others is the overflow of that cup. It's not sacrificing what you would have filled up in your own cup to give to other people, because then you're not showing up for yourself, and how can you show up for other people? So self-care for service, spend those first 2 hours just focusing on you. Whatever it is that fills your cup up, do it. Everybody's different. We don't have to do the same thing, but whatever it is, just prioritize that self-care for service. Lastly, in that regard, no phone after 9 p.m. I go to bed or at least I try to. That's one of the things we're going to unpack today. My goal is to be asleep by 10 o'clock. I'm always falling asleep at like 10:15, 10:30, which is annoying because I don't want to do that, but it's something I'm working on as well. But no phone for that hour between that last hour of the day before bed. This next one is something that I came up with. It's nothing fancy, but it kind of sounded cool. It's called the 90-10 rule. So the 90-10 rule is 90% produce, 10% consume. On the last episode, I talked a lot about the balance between being a producer and a consumer, and how you should, solely focus on your own inspiration instead of seeking it from others. And I still do believe in that, but I think it's healthy to have 10% or maybe even 15% consumption, because it's good to see what's going on in the world. We can't just be a complete hermit. I take that back. You can if you want to, but I think it's healthy to sort of have a little bit of consumption in there. That way, you might spark one of your best ideas. But keeping that production hat on for 90% of the time, I think is really, like, instead of having it 75-25, I think it just a little bit more, really heavy on that production side. You're always going to feel better about things, I think, because when you focus on your own process and you focus on getting better on the next thing, inevitably you make progress instead of comparing yourself and getting wrapped up in what other people are doing. Just 10%, I think, is a good number. At least that's what I came up with. On the topic of social media consumption, something I've been really trying to focus on is, instead of focusing on timers in the platform, like a 15-minute timer or 30-minute timer, instead of focusing on that, just constantly ask yourself, like, how are you feeling? How am I feeling when you're in the restroom and you're sitting on the toilet? How am I feeling as I mindlessly scroll? Instead of depending on some sort of timer, just constantly ask yourself, but before every swipe, how is this making me feel? If your answers are, feeling like shit, then use that as your feeler, whatever you want to call it, instead of relying on some sort of timer that you set up for yourself. Because how many of you set those timers and you just hit that X out button? So constantly just measure how it's making you feel and just moving forward with that way. Also, just stop filling in the gap. For example, let's say you're working on a project and you have to wait for something to render. You have that little bit of time, like, 20 seconds where it's rendering out. That gap in between, when you feel bored or there's nothing to do and your instinct is to grab your phone and to scroll, stop filling in that gap. If you have to just look up and remind yourself to look at the wall and say, don't fill in the gap, just close your eyes, breathe for a sec, and wait till this is done rendering, right? When we do that, we're not only intentionally creating that space for ourselves, but we're also reminding ourselves that we should not be mindlessly scrolling. Gosh, that is like a trending topic on this podcast so far. But yeah, when you feel bored, sit in silence. Social media hardly ever makes you feel better, especially in moments like that when you're in deep focus and you have like 20-30 seconds in between going on to the next thing. Just sit in silence, breathe for a sec, focus on your breath, and just be. Now, this third one that I have in mind is to wake up consistently at 6 a.m. every day, even on weekends. So, oh God, this is something I struggle with so hard. It's tough because on the weekends, I just feel like this excitement about not having to work the next day. And so I'll stay up a little bit later than usual. And the latest I get up on the weekends are probably like 7:30. Anything after that, I feel like, I don't know. Even if I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep, I still tell myself to get up because it's going to make me feel better. But I would love to just wake up at 6 a.m. every single day and be asleep at 10 p.m. every single day. It's something that I've always thought about. I do struggle with it. That's definitely an intention that I have because I want autonomy in my life. And I know that there are days when I'm just low on energy, and it's probably because I'm waking up at different times on the weekends. So that's the third intention that we're going to be focusing on. The fourth one is to take time to relax after clocking out of work. Usually the instinct is to like go distract myself with something else right when I get off. But I find that after a day of work, when you've been focused for a while, you really need to take care of your mind as well throughout this process. So take that pause to just relax. So take a bath. I've been taking more baths lately, and I never used to take baths. Caroline, she takes one every day. It's something that I started doing after work. It feels like it's been good for my mental health, just taking that time to pause, not necessarily scrolling on social media, just putting on some relaxing music, or even finding like an inspiring YouTube video to just chill, or even a book, something like that. Another thing you could do is walk. I'm a huge advocate for walks. I think it's super good for the mental health. I think those are healthy things to do right when you get off work. It allows you time to reflect, to think about your day, to plan for the next day, that sort of thing. The next intention that I have for myself is to meditate twice daily for at least 10 minutes each. The goal would be to hit the 30-minute mark every single day in meditation. I would love to do that. We'll get there eventually, but baby steps. I think that meditating once in the morning or like early day and then once like in the evening, I think it'd be really, really good for just staying focused and staying sharp, and also just being mindful of what's going in and out of my body, my brain, everything. There's this short little story in a book that I'm reading right now, and I'm gonna air quote it real quick. The one constant through your life is breath. All of your friends, your family, the country you live in, all of that can change. Breath is with you always. And by the way, this was spoken by a 10-year-old monk. He's only 10 years old, which is insane in my eyes. This 10-year-old added, when you get stressed, what changes? Your breath. When you get angry, what changes? Your breath. We experience every emotion with a change of the breath. When you learn to navigate and manage your breath, you can navigate any situation in life. If I had that wisdom at 10 years old, oh my God. It's so true though. And this is exactly why I want to practice meditating twice daily and focusing on my breath, because the overall constant in life is your breath. And the best way to deepen that relationship with breath is through breath work, through meditation, through focus, intentional space that's created for you to just be. The next intention that I want to focus on is practicing the law of detachment. The root of all of my stresses in life has been because I've attached myself to this certain persona that I believed myself to be, or that I strive to be, or something happening by a specific day or time, whatever it may be. And I find that the root of all fear and negativity in life is attachment. And the root of releasing all of that is detachment. Instead of attaching to my thoughts that are negative, just labeling them. So for example, instead of saying I am angry, I could say I am feeling angry. And what that does is it creates this distinction between what you're feeling and who you actually are. It gives you yourself permission to temporarily feel those things, but not to just be those things. Like, I'm not an angry person. I just have moments when I feel angry, just like any other human being. But when we practice saying those words in that fashion, we create a healthier balance between these emotions that we experience and, just different things that we're going through. The next intention that I really want to focus on is practicing non-judgment. Something that I've dealt with my entire life is validating my worth by comparing myself to other people. I think that's something that I really struggled with, and I didn't notice the habit up until recently, in the recent years. When you can take yourself out of this judgmental hat, it just creates a lot more peace, inner peace for you. And when we judge other people or we criticize other people, we see the bad in ourselves. Whereas we search for the good in other people, we see that goodness in ourselves. So by practicing non-judgment, we maintain that peace, we maintain that goodness inside of us. And if I could leave it off with just another statement that I read recently: don't judge someone with a different disease. Don't expect anyone to be perfect. Don't think that you are perfect. This whole judgment hat comes from a place where we think we're better than somebody, or we think that we're perfect. And I hate to say it, but none of us are. So why are we judging other people instead of just focusing on ourselves and focusing on who we need to be tomorrow? Which, while we're on that subject, the next intention is to get in the habit of making a to-be list next to my to-do list. So instead of just writing down all the things that I want to do, focus on who I need to become in order to successfully accomplish those goals. If I need to film today, then I probably need to focus on being sharp, being on time, focused, well-disciplined. I need to make sure that everything is in line. Instead of focusing on, I need to put this piece of equipment up and I need to put this equipment up, I also need to remind myself that I need to be patient. I need to be patient with the process, because sometimes filming can be, let's just be honest, sometimes filming can be a bitch. There's something, like I was just struggling with this camera. It kept turning on and off and it was freezing. Like on my phone, I can connect it to my camera and actually see the display. But I was running into some errors technically, and I felt like a sense of like frustration come up, and I just had to remind myself, be patient. So with all the to-dos in life, how can you actually think about what type of person successfully accomplishes those things? When you focus on the type of person that needs to do those things, you're more likely to actually accomplish those things, as opposed to just focusing on the to-do list. The next intention, which I believe is the 9th, but hopefully I'm not losing count. The next intention that I have for myself in my daily routine is to focus on making value-driven decisions. Instead of just relying on how I feel or other unnecessary factors, focus on my values. What are the values that I have for myself, and how can I make a decision based off of those values? Something I read recently is to reflect on past decisions, both good and bad. Your best decisions, your worst decisions, all of them, because buried in them are your values. So I've reflected in my past and I thought like, maybe the reason why I'm not happy with where I'm at today, or maybe the reason why I'm, not in the best place, is because of decisions I've made in the past. And why did I make bad decisions in the past? Maybe because my values weren't in order. Of course, it starts with deciding on what your values are. I think my values are to be mindful, to be persistent, to focus on self-care for service, to constantly remind myself that life is a process. I could go on a tangent on other values, but essentially just getting to the point where every decision that I have to make, I just lean towards my values. I just ask myself, does this align with being persistent in self-care for service? And if it aligns with the values, it's a good decision. The last intention that I have, it was another thing that I made up, which is called the 1-3-3 method. These sound cool whenever I make them, and then I look back and I'm like, okay. So this 1-3-3 method is to do one hobby at least 3 times per week for at least 30 minutes. So it actually should be 1-3-30. The reason why I think this is so important is because it's so easy to get wrapped up in your day-to-day mundane activities. And the best way to spark some creativity and to just maintain some balance throughout all that is to also focus on your hobbies. Not saying you need a million of them. It's also more difficult whenever you are busy focusing on things to set aside time to focus on hobbies. When you set the intention, you're more likely to actually do that thing. So for me, the main hobby that I'm really wanting to focus on, and something that I definitely would love to dive deeper into another day, but the main hobby that I'm focusing on is music. It's something I've been deeply passionate about forever. And the only way I'm going to actually make something out of it is by intentionally setting aside time to focus on music. I would definitely love to bump up the amount of time that I'm putting towards music, because I actually would love to, make something out of this worthwhile. I love music. Something I'm focusing on is music production and, of course, DJ mixing. And I think that slowly implementing more focused time towards it is going to help me get to where I want to go. This last one is a bonus intention. I wanted to just throw it in here because I think it's so important, which is to practice unselfish joy in fortune of others. I recently received a positive message from a good buddy of mine talking about how he's going through this interview process and he's had a good month recently. And I also heard from another friend of mine who said he's been just killing it in the gym. He's hitting a new PR and he's making more money this year than he ever has. And I love hearing stuff like that. I want my friends, even my enemies, I want everybody to thrive, because ultimately it's going to make this world a better place. And it also just makes me feel good whenever I hear about goodness happening to other people. Practicing unselfish joy in the fortune of others, I think it's just good practice. It's good for your mental health, and we should wish well the people around us. Everybody has their moment of success. Everybody experiences success in different chapters. So for us to get attached and think like, why not me right now? Like, why can't I experience that success? Is just kind of, it's ridiculous to think that way. And we should be happy for other people, whatever their endeavors are. Practice unselfish joy. Just be happy for your people. Be happy for your enemies. Just maintain that peace inside of you so that you can continue showing up authentically for yourself and for others. And that's it. That came out to about 11 intentions, unless I'm just like not doing my math right. I will circle back in and let you know how all these are going. I definitely am not looking to be a perfectionist with any of this. I know that there's going to be some things that I struggle with, but hey, we're setting the intention and we're focusing on this. We're at least going to be mindfully thinking about it, and that's better than not, right? Which is honestly the whole purpose of this podcast, attaching meaning to the mundane activities so that we can find joy through the process. Well, like I said, that wraps up this podcast. Something I do want to throw out there that I haven't mentioned yet is something new. I just started a new newsletter called Mindful Monday. I'll make sure to leave a link to that in the description on all platforms. If not, you can definitely check it out on my socials. For the best place to probably find me is on Instagram at Ashton T. Joe. You'll find all the information there, but go sign up for the Mindful Monday if you want to receive a mindful note every Monday morning to make sure that you just show up authentically for yourself and for other people, and keep it short and sweet because I don't like typing out long essays. So if you're into that, that sounds cool to you, make sure to go check that out. Also, you can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube if you're into video. I have the video portion on Spotify as well, so whichever one, I wanted to make sure that I was able to access all platforms that were necessary. I would love for you to share this podcast with a friend or family member, a loved one, somebody who you feel like would benefit from hearing this type of message. And if you're willing, I would love if you left a review. 5 stars is ideal, but I would love to hear some feedback and to know what's going on with you guys. I would love to interact. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this podcast, and if that's your thing, then I would definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.